Hey, what's going on? You keep the changers. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for hanging out with us today. Thank you for just taking your time and really hanging out and listening to a super powerful human, a great friend, and a story that you may have never heard anything like before. Today, I'm joined by a pastor friend of mine who's really a brother. He's a brother in Christ, but he is the pastor of Celebrate Recovery and at Sun Valley Church in the Basin in the Phoenix area. He's also the prison pastor, prison ministries pastor at Sun Valley. He'll tell us about that. And in another world, he is the owner of Gill Auto Service, where he has owned a company that services automobiles for a number of years. And we'll let him talk about that too. But brother, thank you, man. Thank you, Mark, for joining us. This is so cool.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. I'm looking forward to it.
So about, what was it? 3 weeks ago, Mary and I were watching YouTube and we saw the Cigar Pastors podcast with Pastor Chad from Sun Valley Church. And I got to tell you, dude, I got no cigars. I can't help you with that.
I got some.
Well, you go right ahead and help yourself. I don't have that. I've just got this fake background here and we've got conversation. So let's go at it. So, Mark, we had breakfast last week and you told me a little bit about your story, and I've known it anyhow. As I've started to Celebrate Recovery, you've absolutely been a mentor to me. But I'd like to, if you would, kind of take us back. How do you get from there, that place, that brokenness, to the place where you are now? And I'm just going to open it up to that and ask you to dive right in.
Okay. Well, we could talk for a long time about that. Let me give you the shorter version. Let me give you the cigar preacher version. I got sober November 22nd, 2005. So we're coming up on 17 years of sobriety. Right on. And that would include weekends and football games and NASCAR races, in a row of recovery. And that was always something that was always hard for me anyhow, is to stay sober more than a week or two. But back in November 22nd of 2005, that is the point where I would say that I hit my rock bottom finally. And I guess I could say that I thought I hit my rock bottom many times. But that wasn't true. This was true this day. So I started drinking, when I was 14 years old, right out of the gate, got drunk, puked, blacked out, did all the cool stuff. And here's the important part of this message. The very next day at 14 years old, I come to, and the very first thing I think of is I can't wait to go out and do it again. But this time I'm going to control my drinking. I'm going to control it so I don't puke, black out, and don't remember things. So right out of the gate at 14 years old, I'm trying to control my alcohol on day 2. That's important for those out there that might have an alcohol or drug issue, because you will know what I'm talking about. Because the biggest problem for alcoholics is that we're always trying to control things with our drinking. And the truth is normal drinkers don't do that. I never hear of a normal person thinking about, the stuff that I think about. It just doesn't happen. So anyhow, back to 14 years old, drinking. I would say I was an alcoholic right out of the gate. I would say most people would tell you, my friends, that I was an alcoholic. We were 16, 17 years old, and I remember people saying, "Mark, I think you're an alcoholic." And the truth is we would laugh about it, and I would say something like, "Oh, I don't have a cardboard sign, and I'm not on the corner of a street, begging for money." And that's literally kind of what we looked at alcoholism as young kids, not knowing what the heck's up, right? But I did concern my friends, and so I took things to different levels. I always was the guy that ended the parties. I was the guy that would walk around and drink, alcohol that maybe other people didn't finish. That was just how I rolled. That was all good and well, younger kids drinking alcohol. That's kind of a normal story. But the truth is that I started having some consequences with my drinking. And on May 17th of, 1984, there was a huge consequence with me. Now, I'd already had little issues, getting in trouble and drinking and being drunk and fighting and brawling, those things. But this was a different night. We went out with I built race cars and hot rods, that kind of stuff. Even back then, that's when I really did that a lot. And so I built a lot of friends' cars and stuff. One night we decided to go out to a bar to go shoot some pool, and me and my wife, we jumped in our 70 Chevelle hot rod, and my sister and one of my friends, Chris, they jumped in his 68 Camaro, and we drove to the bar and we hung out, played pool, had chicken, did all the stuff. It was fun. And we closed the bar down. And on the way home, he decided that he was going to pass my car. And I wasn't going to let that happen because, well, I built the motor in his car and I built mine. So it was like a thing, I'm not going to let him pass me. So, we were now both of us racing down a back road in Oregon, out in the country, coming home from a bar. During that event, I looked up and I thought I'd seen a faint light ahead of us, way ahead of us. And it happened pretty quick. As a matter of fact, it was like, I think I see a light. And then, of course, their car is next to us. And I was thinking, oh, my goodness, there's a car coming. And do I let off the gas? Do I speed up? What do I do? And in the split second, all of it was over because it didn't matter. They had actually, my sister and my buddy Chris had hit a car head on at somewhere around 120 to 130 miles an hour. And I turned the car around to come back to the accident, and it looked like what you would think maybe a plane wreck would look like. They had hit another older Rambler car of some sort, big old car, head on, and it was a mess. And my sister was ejected out of the front of the car, and I found her. I ended up finding her in the field, and she was obviously dead. I tried to bring her back to life and wasn't able to. But I did help my friend Chris, that was in a bundled up, chunk of steel is what you would really call it. And I was able to actually help save him that night. So now everybody listening to this would think, oh my goodness, that's going to be Mark's bottom, right? That's going to be my bottom. My sister passed away. I couldn't save her. And the very next day, I woke up with this thing that I would live with for many years to come, and that was guilt, shame, and remorse. And I'd never felt that before until that next morning. So that kind of started my drinking, and now my drug use in a different direction. I took on a new drug, which was cocaine at the time, and because cocaine is a really good pain remover along with alcohol. So I spent a lot of time, using cocaine, and then it was pretty expensive. So I became a cocaine dealer so I could get it cheaper. And that was my life. Starting off in this journey of how am I going to survive with this heavy weight of what happened with me that night. And it didn't happen just to me. It happened to our whole family. My wife was there. As a matter of fact, my wife and I, before they hit that car head on, we looked next to us and we looked at my sister, and my sister was actually waving to us as if she was waving goodbye. That was our last memory of my sister Tammy. And it haunts my ex-wife as well as me. And I spent from 1984 up until 2005 when I got sober, basically just trying to survive and trying to control my drinking and my drug use, just to deal with the world. And I did a really lousy job at it. I spent, now at this point, my wife about a couple of years after that incident, my wife decided she wasn't going to put up with me anymore and divorced me. So now we got 2 kids together and we're divorced. And then I get into another relationship, have another child. I get into another relationship, have another child. So now I've got 4 kids with 3 exes, and I am this continued mess. And so trying to survive. I did try a rehab facility about, I think it was about 6 years after the accident. I had an intervention happen with me with my mom and my girlfriend's mother at the time, and they took me to rehab, and which was one of the hardest things for me to do, just to get into that car and go. But I did, and on the way there, I snorted an 8-ball of Coke and drank about a half case of beer on the way, just trying to use up the rest of the stuff that I had, because I was imagining I was never going to be able to do it again, and I was a mess by the time I got to the rehab facility. I had a lot of people looking at me like I was like the Walking Dead coming into the facility. I was a mess. I think they had me, rest. I don't really remember a lot of it. I just remember waking up 24 hours later with some guy laying sitting next to the bed, watching me, helping me in case I had a medical issue. And I remember waking up in this facility and thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Just scary.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, it was interesting because I remember when I had the last drink, and actually I was the night before I was at work, and I was a finance manager at a car dealership, Mark, right? And I snuck into the bathroom to do a line of cocaine. I thought everybody was gone. I had a 12-pack of beer by my desk because I was doing a job I hated, and I had to be buzzed to do it. Even though it paid great, I hated it. And I snuck in the bathroom to do a line thinking everybody was gone, and my boss walked in behind me, and I tried to hide it. And I remember I had some white on my nose, and I said, man, those donuts were good. Right. And this guy's thinking, oh, this guy's an idiot. It's like 11 o'clock at night. Right. So I'm wiping my nose. Next morning, I called in sick because I knew if I went in, I would use, because I hated my job so much. I knew I would use at work. Yeah. And then on a Friday, I went in and my boss said, come here. And I thought, uh-oh. He said, you're out. No more. And I was so relieved, Mark. I loosened my tie and thought, now I can get some help. I weighed 150 pounds, was using, I don't know, 3 to 5 grams of cocaine. I was a drunk, and I was so relieved that now I could maybe get some help. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did that treatment center, was that the turning point for you, or what was it that got you on that journey that made you feel like, hey, maybe there's another way to live life?
Well, it's interesting that you should say that, because most people would think that, after me being there for the 30 days that I was there, that I would come out and I would just be getting my stuff together. And the truth is that that's not what happened. So in recovery, if you're not doing recovery for yourself, and in my case, I wasn't. I didn't go to that rehab center because I wanted to go. I went because other people wanted me to go. And so that's a problem. And then the truth is that when I got out, I found out there was, some cheating going on, between my ex and somebody else. And then, the truth is that I cheated on her many times in my alcohol and drug use. So we had a dysfunctional relationship anyways. But once I learned that relationship wasn't going to go anywhere, I thought, why am I getting sober for her? Why am I getting sober for my mom and dad, or my mother and her mother? And literally, I think it was a week later, out of getting out of rehab, I started using again. As a matter of fact, the 30 days I was in there was 30 of the best days I've ever had. I felt like I was on top of the world. I just had everything conquered. And I thought, under my own power and on my own doings, that I was going to be able to get out of there and get sober, just control my drinking on my own. I don't need those stinking AA meetings. I don't need to get a sponsor. I don't need to go through a 12-step program. I don't need to do all these things they told me to do. I'll do it my way. Well, my way led me back to drinking and drugging within a week. So that didn't work out for me.
What did?
I spent the next, I guess it's almost 15 years, from 1991 up until 2005, basically doing the same thing I had been doing. And that is drinking, drugging, having fun, working. I'm pretty functional doing all this. But at the same time, it's clear that I'm kind of on a death mission. Everybody would tell you that I was always trying to kill myself because I was always doing crazy stuff and almost dying often. And I remember being in and out of the hospital for various accidents and stuff, where even in accidents where other people died again, and somehow I would always end up living. And it was just nuts. But what brought me to my end, what my rock bottom ended up being was in November, and it was 22nd of November 2005. I had just lost my job a week or two before this date. My parents and my friends, my family, my kids, nobody was really wanting to talk to me because I just didn't have a lot of good things to talk about or to even. I had nothing really going on in my life except for terrible bad things. I don't know how many court cases I had at this time, were drunk drivings and fighting with police and hitting police officers, them hitting me back, and you name it, violating restraining orders. I had just a mess of things happen. Lost my job, and I was literally trying to drink myself to death. I remember drinking a whole fifth of tequila and taking a bunch of pills. And somebody had found me in a parking lot in Eugene, Oregon, and they took me to the hospital. And in the hospital, they decided that they were going to put me in the psych ward of the hospital to keep an eye on me because it was clear that I was trying to die. And so I spent, I think it was 7 to 10 days in the psych ward of a hospital, where I cleaned up, detoxed, felt like $1 million once again. As a matter of fact, my two older kids at the time, they came and picked me up. I think one of them was 16, one was 15, and they picked me up from the hospital and took me home. And I live out in the country, and they took me home, and they were crying, I was crying, and they were telling me how it's all going to be okay, and I'm like, yeah, it's going to be okay. And truthfully, I couldn't wait for them to leave. I was literally just kind of looking at my watch, thinking, how much longer are they going to be here? Because they got to leave so I can start using again. And that's what happened. They left, and I let them down terribly because I started using and spent the last money I had on alcohol and pills. And I spent the next 7 days drinking and drugging and trying to kill myself, trying to not wake up. And it sucked because I kept waking up. And I remember I live out in the country. I live on 30-something acres of forest land in Oregon. And I remember there was a terrible windstorm and trees were falling. And I remember hearing on the news that some tree fell on a house and killed somebody. And I remember praying to a God that I didn't believe in, that if he would just let a tree fall on my house and end my life, that would be the best thing for me. So here I am praying to God, asking him to have one of these trees fall over on my house. And as I'm drinking, taking handfuls of pills and passing out and waking up, instead of 8 hours or 10 hours later, or not waking up at all, I'd wake up an hour later and wonder, what the hell am I going to do again? And this cycle went on for about 7 days. And finally, I got to the very end of all of this, and no more alcohol available. I took my last alcohol, my last handful of pills, and thought, this has got to do it. and I took them, and I'll be darned if I didn't wake up like 2 hours later. So I'm like, all right, it's time for plan B. And plan B is to finally put a gun to my head and actually have the courage to pull the trigger. Now I had done that many times, and I just never had the courage to actually pull the darn trigger. But in this moment, I had the courage.
I have to stop you. I have to stop you because I want the audience to get this.
Okay.
So remember, I introduced this guy. He's got a successful business. He's a pastor of recovery at one of the biggest Celebrate recoveries in the country. He's a pastor of prison ministries. So I just want you, as you're hearing this, how low this had to go. It doesn't have to go that low with everybody. Well, with this guy, he just felt it had to keep getting lower. But I'm just blown away because it got so low and who you are now. But go ahead and finish that. Tell us what the transition was, because you and I get that there was something going on in this brain of ours that's a whole lot different now than it was then. There was something that there for you was ugly, right? The here for you is somebody who changes hundreds. I was going to say thousands, hundreds and thousands of lives. So what was it? What was that? And again, you get, if you're listening to this, God didn't want this guy to die. He had a mission in mind. Talk to us about it, Mark.
Yeah, let me finish telling you this story, how I got introduced to God. Because at this moment, just so you all know, I don't believe in God. I had been church hurt, and I had been abused at a Catholic school when I was younger, so I had no relationship with God at all. And the only relationship I had at this point was as I was praying for him to have trees fall on my house, and it didn't happen. So now that God doesn't even work, right? So in this moment of running out of dope and waking up and making a decision to use the gun finally, I walk into the kitchen of my double-wide mobile home, and I picked the picture off the wall of my sister Tammy, which passed away, that I was part of, ending her life with another guy. And I'm talking to her in my kitchen, and I'm bawling. And I'm like, Tammy, I'm coming to see you. Yeah, I don't know how that's even possible, but I'm thinking she's in heaven, and I'm going to go be with her, apparently. But I'm talking to her, and I turn around to walk to my room where the gun is. And on my way between the kitchen and my room, about 10 steps, I stopped, and I had this overwhelming feeling that I needed to reach out to the Lord. And I did. I stopped, I looked up, I'm crying, and I scream out to the top of my lungs, God, if you're effing there, I could really use your effing help, because I'm going to effing die. I didn't say effing. I said the F word. I'm screaming F bombs to God, and basically asking him to show himself and to help me. I walk into my room, look at my sister, say my final words, put the gun to my head, and I pull the trigger. About a half an hour of time goes by, and I am out. And I come to because someone is beating on my double-wide mobile home door. And I finally come to. I'm looking around my room. I'm wondering what is going on. I look down. The gun hammers down on the gun. I don't have a hole in my head. I'm wondering, am I having an out-of-body experience? What's happening? So it didn't matter. As I'm wondering all this, someone's beating on my door, and it is loud. So I get up and go answer the door. And here is a man. His name is Glenn, and he is standing at the door. And I'm like, hey, Glenn, what's up? And he looks at me, and he's like, I don't know what's up. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, yeah, all I know is, he says, he's about a half an hour ago, it's like an angel tapped me on my shoulder. And he reached over and he tapped his shoulder. He said it was overwhelming. And he said he was on his way to do some sort of motorhome deal or something. And he said he couldn't help it, but he was just overwhelmed, and he came out to find me. Now then, Glenn, this guy's been trying to help me get sober for somewhere around 18 years.
Wow.
This guy I used to sell cocaine to. He was an RV sales guy. and him and all the other guys. I was their dealer. And but he got sober, and he kept on telling me about how he had a new life. He found a new way. And he would share that every time he'd hear about some bad horror story with me, he would come by my work, throw down a little pamphlet and say, meet me at this meeting. And for 18 years or so, I said I would. And I never went one time. Not one time. And now this man is standing at my door telling me that an angel tapped him on the shoulder and told him to come find me. And I'm like, okay. So he looks at me in confusement and he says this. He says, Mark, you don't look good. And I was like, well, I don't feel good, Glenn. And he's like, okay. He goes, could you just answer 3 questions? And I'm thinking, yeah, Glenn, I'll answer 3 questions. And he goes, all right, question number 1. He says, Mark, is your life unmanageable right now? And I was like, oh, F yeah, it is. It sure in the heck is, Glenn. It's pretty effing unmanageable. You know, he has no clue what happened inside this house. And so he goes, all right, question 2, tell me about God. What do you think about God? And then I just went off with a series of F-bombs. You know, I don't want you talking to me about God, you know, F this, F that. And pretty soon he gets a smile on his face. And he's got this huge smile, dude. It's amazing. And he goes, so you're mad at God. He goes, that means you believe in God, because, you know, you can't believe in something here, you know, that you're mad at, right? And I'm like, for the first time, Bart, I had this belief all of a sudden that, oh my gosh, I believe in God. I'm just mad at him. And then he says, all right, question 3. Mark, since I haven't been able to help you and your family and your kids and rehabs and hospitals and institutions, no one's been able to help you. How about you let God help you? You're the one that you're so effing mad at. And here's what happened. I'm bawling. I'm standing there, my boxers and a t-shirt. I look like hell warmed over. And I'm just all of a sudden in this moment, I have these chills up and down my arms and my legs. And I'm just overwhelmed. And I looked at him and I said, yes, I will. I'll let this God that I don't know help me. And then he's like, all right, can I come in? He's out on the front porch the whole time. And he comes in the house and he says, all right, get on your knees and I'm going to pray with you. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's come to this. Oh, someone's going to pray for me. I've never had anybody pray for me. But I got on my knees and he prayed for me. And I had no clue what he was praying. It turns out what he was praying was the 3rd step prayer of Alcoholics Anonymous. I found that out later. But he was praying. And the whole time he was praying, I'm holding onto his big old hands. And I got these tingles up and down my legs and my arms. And I'm overwhelmed with this fact that everything's going to be okay in my head. And then I felt this lightness, this weightlessness in my body. And I thought it was so weird. But he kept praying. And I kept on in my head, I kept on thinking, man, everything's going to be okay. And then the other side of my brain be like, no, nothing's okay. He doesn't know what happened. He doesn't know you put a gun to your, he doesn't know these things. Then all of a sudden I'd switch back to, no, everything is going to be okay. And then finally he's done, stands up, gives me a hug. And he looks at me and says, Mark, here's the deal. If you do what I've been suggesting for you to do, everything is going to be okay.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of my journey. As a matter of fact, the very next morning, I went into that damn Alcoholics Anonymous meeting that the court had forced me to go into. I don't know how many different times, many times over a 20-year period. And I went in there for the very first time on my own. No one made me go. I wanted to go, and I wanted to get help. And that was the difference. And I've been sober since that day.
Amen. You know what's interesting about that with the guy that came to the door is that I've got a guy that I'm sponsoring that just can't get it, bro. Every time, you know, he'll go dark. He'll go 3 or 4 or 5 days and get it, then go on a big bender, call me right on the end of it saying I'm a lousy person, and then he goes dark. And I'm just thinking, man, there's hope. There's hope for that guy that I thought he died because we went like 3 weeks and I couldn't get a hold of him. And one day he said, "I'm still alive." And I thought, phew. And we had a conversation, haven't heard from him since. But because of what you just said about the guy who knocked on your door, I will not, even though I get frustrated, I will not give up on this guy. And I think that, my gosh, that is so powerful right there. Thank you for that.
Yeah, he never gave up on me. He had an overwhelming feeling. And by the way, this has happened in my life in my 17 years of recovery. I've got to go to people's houses and I've got to get on my knees and pray the third step prayer with them many times. And God exists. He dwells within us, you know. And we just got to listen to that still small voice. And that's the voice he listened to that day. And that man is my angel on earth that started the process with me of changing my life. And Alcoholics Anonymous, going in, in step 2, it says we came to believe. It doesn't say we come in and believe. It says we came to in some cases. Just because this happened didn't mean I believed in God. It meant to me that I knew that there was something out there that saved my butt.
Yes.
Because of the story, a gun didn't go off, bullet had a divot in it. It didn't fire for some reason. God must have stopped the gun from going off. And some guy at the time I'm screaming F-bombs is hearing, this still small voice in his body, or as Glenn put it, somebody tapped him on the shoulder and said to come find me. So, I go into that AA meeting the next day. For me, I introduced myself, when they said, "Hey, is there anybody here in the first 30 days of recovery want to introduce yourself so we can get to know you better?" And I said, "My name is Mark. I'm an alcoholic. I need you guys' effing help," is what I said as I was bawling all over the place. And those folks do what they do, and they started helping me. I went back every day. One day I started listening to the suggestions of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started doing what Glenn asked me to do, years before. And I started doing it, and I'll be darned if it didn't work, and I'll be darned if that isn't where I found God in my life. And the ocean used to be my higher power. It was my higher power for about a week or so, because I still couldn't fathom this whole God thing. And then God, through the rooms Alcoholics Anonymous, he showed me who he was. One day at a time, one moment at a time, he showed me clearly who he was, and then I came to believe. About 2 weeks into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I came to believe the power greater than me could restore me to sanity, and that's exactly what's happened.
Yeah, you know what I heard? We came to,
yeah,
we came to believe, right?
Yep.
And Jesus says, "Pick up your mat and walk, man. Get your butt to a meeting and sit there no matter what."
Yeah.
And that's what you did. But it took, what's interesting? You and I talked last week, and you told me that about this journey of how long it took you to get there after the rehab, and then it took years. And the message that I think that I would just want somebody to hear is it doesn't have to take years, right, brother?
Yeah.
I mean, I got sober in 1985. I mean, get that, right? And today I'm clean sober, but I flipped addictions, bro. And I flipped addictions with sexual integrity issues.
Yeah.
And it took decades for me to get freedom. Today, the greatest reward that God's given me is the freedom from that garbage, that insidiousness. But I didn't have to go through it. I chose to, but you know what? You and I can't. We're so grateful for what's going on now, but we have regrets. At least I do. And my regret is that I didn't listen to it earlier. See, I knew how to stay sober, but I didn't know how to take those same principles and not be a narcissistic, selfish pig that only cared about me. It took me decades to die to self. And when I died to self and could be and could serve others, that's when everything changed, man.
Yeah.
And I just wish I'd done it sooner, but I didn't. I accept that. But now my message is that much clearer, man. Don't waste the time. Don't waste the time, get help immediately.
Yeah. I talk to people daily about this. My talk all the time is this, you don't have to go through what I went through. Your bottom can simply be a lot shallower. And it's all about a choice, and the truth is that if we don't like ourselves, or we don't love ourselves or like ourselves,
Yes.
we're probably not going to do it. So the message is always just get into a meeting, see what God has for you, and just keep going. But the key is that we have to find that inner self that says I'm done. Now, a lot of people would have, that know me would say, Mark, you should have been done 1,000 times. And I was like, I know, but I wasn't. And the truth is for me in my life, it took all of what it took to create me to be the person that I get to be today. Yeah. But you don't have to go through what I went through. You can go into Celebrate Recovery. Oh my goodness. I tell people Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life, and Celebrate Recovery saved my heart. And it did. Celebrate Recovery, when I got into that a couple of years after AA, and I started learning about Jesus, and his love and all, and it started changing my heart. And for other people, which is why I get to do what I do today, because God has changed my heart. And it was through the power of Jesus Christ, through the rooms of Celebrate Recovery, that was all possible.
Yeah. And what I see when I see people that know you and watch you and see your leadership, I'd love to have you come back and talk about what it really means to be a leader in a recovery program. But when I see people look at you, they respect you so much. And they respect you because of who you are, not because of who you were. They respect you for who you are, not because of who you were, but they know how real you are. And that's what I loved last week when we went to breakfast. Man, this dude is real. And think about the brokenness for which you came, and now you're leading this ministry. And people look at you through all the turmoil of the recovery. They look at you as being this leader, and you're a leader of leaders. So, that's just such an incredible story how God's used you. And again, unfortunately, we're getting a little tight on time, but you had a scare happen. If you don't mind hitting on it real quick. I hate to shortcut the story because it's so good, but tell us about the story, the scare you had, because it becomes so clear to me, knowing you, that God has a mission for you. God's using you. And you thought you were going home, and he said, no way. Tell us a little bit about that story as we wrap up.
Yeah. So about a month ago, apparently I had a heart issue. So I'm going to give you the quick story, but I got to touch on a lot of it here. So I go home, have a normal night, kiss my wife and daughter goodnight, go to lay down and go to bed. And once I lay down and went to bed, I thought, something's not right. And I felt this shrinking of my chest is what it felt like. And I knew I was going to die. As a matter of fact, it was overwhelming feeling that, yep, I'm not going to make this. And I've never had a heart issue ever. And I got up, and I knew that fire was going to end up showing up at the house. And so I got my shorts back on, I put my gun away, locked it all up to make sure that it was in a safe spot. So I'm very aware of what's happening. I go in and kiss my daughter and kiss my wife on the head again, tell them I love them, sit down in the chair, and I tell them, you guys, I think I'm going to die. Something's not right. And then about that moment, I turned white and passed out.
Wow.
My wife gets over to me, and she starts doing CPR. I come back, and I noticed that they're telling me they dialed 911. My wife's literally kind of doing a sternum rub on my chest, irritating the hell out of me to keep me awake. But I kept telling her that it was okay because I'm going to die. I know I'm going to die, but it's okay because I've got to live 17 years longer than I was supposed to. So I'm all good. I'm just good with this. And of course, she was not good with it. She was using some choice words to let me know that she was not happy with this decision that I was just accepting to go. And so this happened over and over again. Finally, I'm in a ambulance. I'm on my way to the hospital. I'm in and out several times. I come to in the ambulance, and I'm telling the firefighter guy that's helping me the same thing. I'm like, I'm not gonna make it. Tell everybody I love them. Thank you for helping me. Tell the firefighter guys I love them. All this stuff, and then of course he looks at me and says some badass firefighter shit, and he's telling me how I'm gonna make it, and I will be okay. And then I went out again. Get to the hospital, same thing. I get in there, they're all working on me, and I'm back awake again. And finally, I have this moment again where I feel it really bad this time, and I'm sure that I'm not going to come back from this one. And I looked at the nurse and I was like, make sure you tell everybody I love them. And she looks at me and she goes, you're going to be okay. And I was like, boom, and I went out. So this time is different, because when I went out, all of a sudden now I'm talking to somebody sitting on the right side of me. I thought they were in the hospital at the side of the bed with me. And I'm having this conversation, telling them, I am so happy with going to where I was going. And it felt good. It felt like I was going to paradise. And I had this overwhelming good feeling of going. And then this person said something like this. Well, Mark, you've got all these reasons to live. You got your kids, and you got your friends and family and your church people, all these things. And basically they gave me an option to live. And I was like, almost kind of sarcastically, I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll live. And then I come to in the hospital, and there got a nurse standing right in front of me, and I looked at her and I said, I'm going to live. And she looks at me, she's like, okay. And I was like, no, I'm going to live. I'm going to make it. I made a decision. I'm going to live. And then I looked to the right of me to see who's sitting next to me, and there's no one there. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? But the weird part about all this is that I never passed out again. I got a stent put in my widowmaker artery in my heart. The guy that did the surgery there said that I shouldn't be alive, that I should have passed away at least 5 times, because he said I didn't have a heart attack. He said I had a heart stoppage. And then I come to find out that when I went and seen the doctor 3 days ago, the follow-up checkup, the guy looked at me and he said, Mark, I just want you to know that that a miracle has taken place. He goes, us here at my office, I have 5 guys that do heart surgery. He's the top guy. He says, it's amazing that you're here. We've never seen anything like this. You're a one of a kind. And it's apparent to me that there's been an intervention of sorts. God has intervened into your life. And when he told me that, I was just thinking, wow, this is crazy. I can't believe that I'm this one-off guy that survived this heart issue, But then part of me goes, no, of course, because I've had so many times where God has saved me. But for whatever reason, God saved my life. I should be gone, and I'm not. So here I am. And I guess the last time I was out, I had a conversation in my dream with somebody and chose to live. And at the same time, I had this clear vision of the amazingness of what it would be like to actually go be with what I considered to go be with Jesus.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So here I am. Apparently God has different plans for me. He wants me to still be here doing what I'm doing. And I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep waking up every day and surrendering and asking him what he needs for me. And I'm just going to go ahead and do it. It's been working for 17 years. I'm going to continue doing what's been working.
Boy, thank you. Because everybody that's listening to this needs to hear that it's just about being obedient, right?
Yeah, it is.
Thank you for that.
It is. Yeah. And in my selfishness of wanting to go be with Jesus, my selfishness just knows no bounds, right? I was selfish when I was drinking and drugging, and as a Jesus follower, I can still be selfish.
And your realness, as I said earlier, is what makes you a great leader and a great friend. And there's something about an authentic leader that makes everybody want to follow. And what's cool about this is we're all, every human being on the planet has hurts, habits, and hangups. And what you've shown is, hey, I don't judge you. I'm just glad you're here. And we're going to do this thing called recovery together. And I know you've done that for me. You've taught me how to be better at this Celebrate Recovery leadership piece, which has been a one day at a time challenge. And it's not because of the people that I lead. It's because what it's taught me is how to be a better leader first within myself. And the rest of it just shows up, right? So thank you for that. Thanks for being a friend. Thanks for hanging out. And if somebody wants to get a hold of you and says, Mark, I love your story. Can we go to lunch? Will you talk? Tell me about Celebrate Recovery. Tell me about prison ministry. How would they get a hold of Mark Gill?
Oh, well, I got a cell number and thousands of people have it.
We're ready.
It's 541-606-9719. You can reach out to me through a call or through a text, and I would love to meet with you. Right. And I would love to give you suggestions. I you know, what I know is I know where the help is. I can lead you to the water. I just can't make you drink it, right? But I am the guy that will be more than willing to help you in whatever fashion I can. And not only that, but I have a group of many people that would be willing to help as well, right alongside me.
Yeah, brother, your stamp and your light shows in so many places, and I congratulate you for that, and thank you for being a brother. I appreciate you so much.
Well, I love you, brother. Thank you for inviting me on this, and I love you all out there. Thank you.
Cool. Talk to you, Mark. Thanks again, buddy.
Peace.